Hi, everybody. If you're just seeing this right now, then you know that there's an investigation underway, and police have actually executed a search warrant along with the DEA at the embattled Columbus Animal Care and Control. As you can see, I'm joined by, oh, we have matching shirts on today. I see that, right? Allie Johnson from Columbus Animal Allies. Allie, thanks for being here.
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, sure. We've been covering this story for a couple months now, but you guys have been there on the ground in Columbus. We know I've confirmed with the police department that they are actually out there today executing the search warrant. That's the only information they can give me, other than the fact that they've been doing the investigation for the last couple of weeks. The DEA confirmed as well it's out there. No doubt that has to do with any kind of medications or the phenobarbital or whatever kind of I should say drugs, if you will, that go along with the euthanization process. Now, you guys, Columbus Animal Allies, have really been putting some pressure on the Columbus City Council to get this shelter reform. Tell me about even those videos that came out. They were just shocking to even see.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we have been going before council for well over a year now. I would say a year and a half or more very regularly, multiple citizens going up and telling them about what we found. But basically, our group, Columbus Animal Allies, started because we felt we needed to do open records requests to find out what was actually going on at
Mhm.
Columbus Animal Care and Control in Columbus, Georgia. And so we had heard a lot of statements. We tried first, asking questions of the public works director who is over, she is the director of the public works department, which is over the Columbus Animal Care and Control. Tried
Yeah.
asking questions of that director, tried asking questions of the manager of Columbus Animal Care and Control. And we were getting, if we got answers at all,
Mhm.
we were getting answers that we were pretty sure were false based on other information that we had. And so we just knew that we needed to get to the truth. And so we started regularly doing open records requests,
Mhm.
a small group of us.
And that
And
was how long ago, Allie?
I joined in the effort probably a year and a couple of months ago.
Okay.
I've always been involved in some respect and kind of watched what was going on there. But as far as really getting deeply involved, it was about maybe a year and 3 months ago, year and a half, that kind of
Do
a
you
thing.
do you
Um,
think the turning point where the surveillance video, internal surveillance video from inside the shelter, which you put in Freedom of Information Acts to get, you got that video, and when you saw that video, I know when I saw that video, my reaction, when you saw that video, what was your first response? Especially when they tried to euthanize him several times intravenously here, and then the heart stick at least once, maybe twice, I think, and Kai just lay there for nearly 40 minutes, 37 minutes, just
yeah.
dying on the floor as shelter workers just came and went, and
Mhm.
as if Kai lying there on the floor wasn't even there.
Mhm. Yeah.
Do you think that was
I
the turning
honestly,
point?
I couldn't believe it. I mean, that was the first video. I happened to pick it up because I was available to go pick up the thumb drive, and that was the first video I had seen from inside that shelter since they got their new cameras several months ago. Got a
Right.
whole new system, and first of all, I wasn't expecting to be able to see what was happening that well. I thought it would be more grainy, but it was like really good quality, and I was, of course, horrified and shocked. I started reviewing it thinking I'm just going to take a look at it. And I think it was probably, many hours before I even looked up from the computer because it was just so horrifying. I couldn't stop watching it. I didn't want to watch it, but I couldn't stop watching it. It was just shocking, horrible, distressing. I mean, everything you can, every label you could put on it. It was not a good thing to see. And I think everyone who saw it felt that way, including the city councilors expressed that too. So
So do you think
yeah.
that it seemed as though I watched an interaction at one of the city council meetings where I heard the city manager say in a, I won't judge the way that he said it, but he said, you can have your animal question later. right?
Mhm.
And
Go
it's
after the animal
from
question.
just picking up on that. Some might say, wow, are they really interested in their animals? Because I know that you guys had been rallying a lot with the city councils. You know, there were meetings that were overflow, and then they pushed people outside into the hallway. It
Yeah.
seemed as though some would say that really the city council really wasn't taking the animal advocates seriously until that video came out, and I'm told until we started the videos, which went viral about what was going on there in Little Columbus, Georgia, because even the local TV news media didn't get onto this story, but we got.
Right. I mean, we begged different media outlets to cover this for, I mean, regularly contacted them, messaged them, begged. And I'm not going to say they never covered it because WTVM did do some coverage of it, but they didn't delve in the way that we wanted them to into the full picture of the whole story of what was going on there. They would cover, it's there, it's kind of a fine line because they are media. They have their types of art of coverage that they do, so
Mhm.
they would do like news stories that were like, oh, euthanasia numbers being questioned, that kind of a thing, where it's small enough that you can get it into a certain number of minutes segment.
You
And
mean
that was the kind of
a
coverage they were
minute
doing, but we could
15?
never
Yeah.
get anyone to delve into the big picture. And so in a sense, we kind of had to be the investigative reporters, to bring out everything that was happening. And then I think now that the video has come out, that was a definite watershed moment. And then also when the council called for the investigation with the Columbus Police Department involved, I think that's when the media started saying, okay, let's look at this big picture of what is going on at the facility. But it has been a challenge, and I don't want to say like, oh, the city council has not taken it seriously, because we've had
Right.
some changes in the city council and there are some new people on board with the city council, and different council members have responded in different ways. But
Mhm.
we met with the mayor back in June. We met with Mayor Skip Henderson by Zoom
Mhm.
back in June of 2023. And we had to convince him to let us tell him what the problems were, because his first statement to us was, I'm not going to listen to a laundry list of complaints about CACC. And so we had to kind of sweet talk, because we had brought a laundry list of issues.
Yeah.
And so we had to kind of sweet talk him into like, please, will you let us tell you, what's going on? And then we were able to go through our list of issues, and we had documents. We had a Google Doc with links in it to different pieces of evidence. And we sent that to him before the meeting. We sent it after the meeting. And we sent it, I think, every one of the 20 some times that we followed up, because he was supposed to give us an early August update.
Mhm.
And that was last early August, like a year ago,
Right.
August. And he never did.
And
And I even tried to speak in front of the city council about mayor responsiveness to citizens, and I was denied to be able to speak. Um, because they have a rule where you can only speak every 60 days on the same topic. And
mm,
just because it was me signing up, they assumed it was going to be an animal thing. And they denied me because they said, you can't speak on the same topic. And I said, well, I've never spoken on mayor responsiveness to citizens. And so it's little things like that where we're told we'll get an update from the mayor and then he ignores. And then we go to his mayor, ask his night where he accepts questions from the public, and we get told by the city manager, oh, go ask your animal questions, in kind of a pejorative way, and things like that, that it feels like it has been very difficult to get the issue taken seriously, and to get to be treated like the way you would expect citizens bringing forth serious concerns to be treated.
yeah. When you heard that the Columbus Police and the DEA were executing or are executing a search warrant at Columbus Animal Care and Control, what was your immediate response?
I was obviously, pleased, because that shows that some action is happening there, and that seems like a good sign, I would say. And especially with the DEA being there, because one of the concerns that we had brought forth was the storage of controlled substances and the record keeping on controlled substances, because we had given instances where records were falsified.
Mm.
And these are records that they have to keep by law, because they're using controlled substances for euthanizing animals. And so I was happy to see the DEA involved because we've actually had a lot of comments from people saying you need to file a complaint, with a complaint with the DEA, with the FDA, things like that, because the way that they're handling controlled substances does not look right, just from the documents that we can see and the reports that people are making.
When you said, let me interrupt for a moment, please. When you say they didn't look right, and people were saying, yeah, you really need to look into this. Describe what you saw, if you could. What was on paper?
Sure. Okay, so every time they euthanize animals, and I'm using their term,
Yeah.
um, they have to record on a record, they have to say which animal, the log ID number of the animal, how much it weighed, how much was tranquilizer used, how much tranquilizer, and then how much euthazol, which is that's the solution that they use to euthanize. They have to put that down. And even just on the record with Chai, you saw where they said they put down the normal amount for her weight. I can't remember exactly the amount that they put down, but it's, if you look at the weight, you're supposed to use,
Yeah.
I think 1 cc per 10 pounds or something like that. So it was the normal amount you would use for a dog that weighs what they said that she weighs. And we saw how many times in the video that they actually injected her. And so that's an example of something that does not look right, because if you used 6 syringes full when the norm is to use one, how on earth can you possibly claim that you used a normal amount of solution? And they also have to put the beginning amount of solution they have and the ending amount of solution, and those numbers have to match up.
Mm.
And I mean, that's just one of the many
Yeah.
things that people who look at the records say this just does not look right.
And speaking of
Sometimes
records,
they'll put down 1 cc of tranquilizer all the way down the page, regardless of the weight of the animal. That's another one that occurred on that day, I believe. So,
let's speak about the supervisor right now of the shelter. Her name is Carnita Hardnett Johnson. And
yes,
from
she is her official title is division manager, and we just like to call her the manager because people are like, what in the heck is a division manager? And you get lost in the weeds with titles. So yeah, she manages all of CACC, which is the shelter side and the animal control.
and you uncovered documents that including her job application, and on that job application, I remember seeing it screamed out, if you will, no experience with animals, no, zero experience with animals, not willing to work nights, holidays, or weekends, and you cannot call my previous employer. And
Yes.
typically, some would say that person wouldn't get the job if you're putting answers like that down and you have no experience. But somehow, Kenita Hardnett Johnson actually got the job as division manager there.
Mhm.
How did that happen? Do we know?
That is something that is, to me, looks very strange. And I have been bugging city council members to look into that for the past year, at least. I have an email that I sent, I don't even know how many months ago, to one of the city council members, and he promised that he would discuss these very, concerning issues with his colleagues. And I don't think that ever happened. And so there was a whole thing around her getting hired. So do you mind if I give a little bit of history on
No,
that?
go ahead, please. You're on the
Okay.
ground. You know more than I do.
Okay. So Drayle Short, as I mentioned, is the Public Works Department director, that's the department that CACC is under.
Mhm.
So when she got promoted, she used to run animal control herself, actually. And the numbers when she ran it were really bad in terms of the number of animals getting killed for space and things like that.
Yeah.
And so when she got promoted, she took somebody who was working as kind of an administrative type assistant to her that she seemed to be very close with personally. And she put that person as interim director, interim manager of CACC.
Mhm.
And that person did not have any of the qualifications that would have even enabled her to get hired by the city, like, none of the degrees or anything like that that they were looking for. So she really could not get the actual job, but she could get the interim job. And she got a significant salary bump to where she was I think she went from like don't quote me on the numbers, but it was like 35,000 to 70,000 or somewhere in there. That was the significance of the bump that she got in pay while she was working that interim job.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think she probably wanted to keep that job. And I think her friend probably wanted to keep her in that job. And a lot of citizens were saying, hey, when are you going to hire somebody? When are you going to hire somebody? How long are you going to have an interim? And she was there 5 years. And we were
Drill,
told,
drill
well,
short.
we didn't get any applications, didn't get any applications. And I was even told that by this, a woman named Becca Covington, who used to be the mayor's assistant at the time. I don't know her exact title, but she handled media communications for the
Mm-hmm.
mayor. And she told me on the phone, well, we just haven't had any applications from anyone who's qualified. And so right before I got really involved in the open records request, the ones who were doing that, I believe it might have been Mimi Steiger,
Mm-hmm.
did a request of all the applications that you've gotten for this position. And lo and behold, it was like 60 plus applicants for this, including the former CEO of Paws Humane had applied for this job. So
Mm-hmm.
there's absolutely no way that you can say that we weren't getting any applications and nobody was qualified and all the lines that we are being fed about this. And wouldn't you know it, soon after we we found out that they had had 60 some applicants, they started really moving on the hiring process and they hired Kanita, I want to say within months of
Wow.
that coming out. And so it was like they knew that what they were saying was proven false and they would have to actually move and hire someone. And it seemed like they didn't really want to hire any of the people who were in that stack of applications that they had gotten over the years. So they found somebody that that was agreeable to them and would manage it in the way that they wanted it managed, which has been the same way that it has been managed since it was Drail Short that was in charge.
What's the euthanization rate there? I mean, because we've seen that video too,
Mm-hmm.
them just taking the dogs
Mm-hmm.
after euthanization. Again, I don't like to use that word because euthanization to me is when a dog or a cat or whatever kind of animal needs to be put down for their own sake, not
Yeah.
because there's lack of room at the shelter. So
Yes.
there's been a high euthanization rate there as well. Am I correct in saying that?
There has, and I don't have the exact rate to quote you right now, but I can tell you that we have published information that shows that the euthanization rate has gone up since Kanita Hardnett Johnson has been in charge. And it's all tracked by Best Friends because they are a Best Friends partner.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I had looked this up before talking to you because I have so much information in my mind. I don't have the exact numbers, but it has gotten worse. And because it has gotten worse, Best Friends had singled them out kind of as a partner that needs help. And we had somebody in the community had contacted Best Friends to ask about this. And they actually emailed and said, well, we were trying to help, but due to resistance from leadership, we have had to step back.
Mm.
And so Best Friends actually wanted to help them. And however you might feel about Best Friends, I know that there are concerns and issues and everything like that people raise with Best Friends. And that's understandable. But the fact is that they do track their numbers to turn into Best Friends because that's a requirement. And they were identified as someone whose euthanasia rate is getting higher. Um, and I can look that up while we're talking and get you the
Mm-hmm.
exact numbers if you
Yeah,
want.
I mean, I just, worry. And the thing was, too, I had questions and other people had questions, too. When you talk about an external investigation, which the mayor and the city manager seconded for the motion, and I believe it was a little that the way they did it wasn't necessarily, per the books, if you will,
Right.
the wording and the actions taken to do that.
Mhm.
However, it was done to have an external investigation by the Columbus Police Department. And, some people had said, whoa, 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 wait a minute. That's an but there was a lot of excitement, A, about that. But
Yes.
B, there were some people saying, wait a minute, how can you have an external investigation by the Columbus Police Department where the agency CACC and the Columbus Police Department have actually teamed up and worked together in the past for cases that involved animals. And there was a lot of speculation that this really isn't going to be an external investigation. Good old boys club. It's just going to be swept
Yes.
under the rug. But I mean, did you find it surprising today when you found out, whoa, they're executing a search warrant and the DEA is there?
Yeah, I mean, that was something, I'm not going to say it was a complete surprise, but yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, to see how big it was, because I believe I had read that there were 20 law enforcement
Hmm.
officers out there, and to see that number, I mean, it wasn't just like one person, going in with a briefcase, like, oh, give me some of your paper files or something. Thank you, we're good. It was, I mean, I don't think you send 20 law enforcement officers out there and people in hazmat suits if you're not really trying to collect evidence. So that was a good sign, as
Yeah.
I believe. And I understand why people have concerns about that. It makes perfect sense to me. And at the same time, I'm hoping that they are doing a thorough, serious investigation and there aren't going to be like, strings being pulled or anything, buddies warning each other about things or anything. But I guess the proof will be in what comes out and how it ends up being handled and the evidence presented. I do think we've been told the investigation has grown from 2 to 7 detectives.
Mhm.
So I think that's good as more and more information comes out. Just hearing that the scope of it keeps increasing. Of course, no one can tell us anything about the specifics of it. But I have, the investigators do seem like they're taking it seriously. And I hope that they are. And I don't know what else to say because we don't have, I mean, we looked into, well, how would the GBI get called in, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation? And that's something that only a couple of individuals have the power to request, one of which I believe is the DA and a few
Mhm.
other individuals, but it's not anything that,
That-
we can't call up the GBI and say, hey, would you come
right.
and join the
The
investigation?
GBI wasn't called in.
As far as I'm aware, no.
No. And the other thing is, I mean, for the DEA to come in, that's pretty significant
Mhm.
um, as well. So, and we were talking earlier, I think, before the interview, the DA, the district attorney, you were saying recused himself from this?
No, that was a
That was a
separate.
separate case. Sorry,
It's
that
in
was a sep
Columbus. Come
that
on
was a
down to
second
Columbus.
case
We
in
just have
Columbus.
all the things going on.
Well,
That was a separate case. Yeah.
okay, but the thing is this, in order for them to have executed the search warrant today, they must have had something, some kind of evidence that warranted enough for the judge to sign that to say, okay, there's stuff going on there. You've got the evidence, go
Yeah.
for it. And that's why they raided the place today. Right.
Right.
But we'll
And
see.
that's a great point. Yeah. So that's encouraging.
Yeah, we'll see what
Um,
happens, what they're able to get
yeah. And I mean, all we know from doing our open records requests is that as far as the specific drugs they do use euthanol for the quote unquote euthanasias. And then they use a mixture of xylazine and ketamine to
out.
for the tranquilizer. So both of those are interesting, interesting drugs. We've had people commenting about other cities where, I don't want to speculate, but if you just look that up and see things that have happened with those drugs in other cities where there was a veterinary connection, it's kind of interesting. I don't want to fuel any
Yeah,
speculation,
no.
but it's interesting to see what specific drugs they're using and that those are drugs that are very regulated and you need to store them in a certain way and you need to record them, how you use them, and you're supposed to have waste logs is what I was told, on if you ever have to throw any away, things like that. So it's not too surprising to me with those kind of drugs involved, and
Mhm.
just knowing how poor the record keeping and things like that are in general.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, do you know, do they use phenobarbital or anything like that you're aware of?
I believe that's what Euthazol is. It's like a
Okay.
brand name.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So also we're talking about the police getting the warrant and hazmat suits you mentioned as well. They went in hazmat suits.
That's what was reported today, on one of the news stories.
I
And I was
saw.
told that's a normal thing to do when you're collecting evidence.
Mhm.
Another thing that I wanted to bring up was volunteers not being allowed and the public not being allowed in the facility for the past week because of a parvo outbreak.
Mhm.
And that's something that, so if you don't mind me going back a little bit at that, you talked about that July 23rd council meeting where they had talked about putting the people involved on administrative leave, and then that didn't happen for a variety of reasons that, there, I won't go into that right now, but so if they had put the people on administrative leave, that prevents not only them from doing any further harm to the animals if they were doing harm to the animals, but
Right.
it also would prevent them from having access to any evidence that is around there. And so a week ago, starting probably a week ago, there was a parvo outbreak, another parvo outbreak there partly because they don't clean and disinfect properly, which is some of the records we brought forth. And they decided to close to the public. They put a sign on the door last Tuesday just saying closed until further notice, thanks management. And then on Wednesday, the volunteers were told they're not allowed to come in. Well, I checked with some people, and in the whole history that anyone can remember of volunteering at CACC, no, volunteers have never been blocked from going in there for any reason, for a parvo outbreak, for anything. Someone said they might have for a little bit during COVID, but they didn't think they even were then. So there is no history of, oh, when there's a parvo outbreak, we're closed to volunteers. This is a completely new thing. And so they're still closed to volunteers. And then we find out today
Hmm.
that the public and volunteers have been blocked from that facility for a full week. And now they're executing a search warrant. And I've seen all these comments from people saying, well, geez, that looks suspicious. And so I messaged a city council member today and said, that looks suspicious. And they said, oh, no, it's not, because it's a police, and state investigation. And of course, they're not going to let the volunteers in. And I said, no, not today, not while it's going on. I'm talking about the previous week.
Right.
And that it just raises questions. I mean, I'm not going to say
Speculate.
that it's one way or the other, but a lot of people in the community are now saying, like, wow, this looks really suspicious. Were they tampering with evidence? Why didn't they want people in there for the past week? And whether, I'm not saying that's true,
Hmm.
um, they might have suddenly decided that they're going to close to volunteers for parvo when they've never done that in the whole history of the place. But if they had been put on administrative leave, which is what I told the council member, nobody would be able to raise these questions. And so that's just another reason. I mean, it kind of turns the whole thing into a mess
Well, they also,
by not putting them on leave.
if we get back to that night, the city council meeting with the mayor and the city manager, they bungled, if you will, the finally that order, to go ahead with the external investigation. Then, at one of the meetings after that, you had a young teenage girl or young teenage woman go up there and, basically give them tell them, hey, you messed up. You didn't do this right. So you have a young teenage woman there pointing out, Mayor, you didn't do this right. City manager, you didn't do this right. So it's almost like, wait a minute, what is going on there? If the city council doesn't even know, or they do know, maybe they're just forgetting, or who knows what. But you can't even get this order. So, the city council
Right.
vote for it.
Right. And I messaged the city clerk about that because so the council member who made the motion, he made some remarks and then other people spoke, and then he came on to make his motion, and he only got half of the motion stated, which was the part about the police investigation. And another council member quickly said, I'll second it. And then the mayor quickly took a vote. And this council member who was brand new, I want to say it was his first or second meeting, I'm not sure, but he was brand new to council. He said, well, Mr. Mayor, and I'd also like to say that those involved should be placed on administrative leave while this investigation is going
Right.
on.
I remember
And
that.
then the mayor just flew. He said, well, that's already been noted in comments or something to that effect. So let's move on. And he just could not move on fast enough. And the mayor has been doing this a long time. He was on city council for a long time before he was mayor. And there is no one who's going to convince me he does not understand how these meetings are supposed to be conducted, Robert's rules of order, things like that. So if um, he probably should have given this council member a chance to amend the motion and retake the vote, because you're not supposed to cut someone off when they're in the middle of making a motion. And
Right.
I believe motions should be restated for clarity if there's any doubt about what was said.
Yeah.
And so I don't really understand. And then another problem with it was that when the minutes came out, they stated that they said will be placed on administrative leave if wrongdoing is found. And I had to go back through the video and
Right.
transcribe everything to make sure that that was not said. And
Mm-hmm.
that was never, ever said. The council member said, if wrongdoing is in his remarks, not the motion, he said, if wrongdoing is found, the police
Mm-hmm.
need to do their job. And also, these people need to be placed on administrative leave while this is all going on. Those are two separate thoughts. And
Right.
so I sent a long email to the clerk, and she tried to say, like, well, I listened to it again and it actually said what I said. And then I sent a long email to basically everybody, council, city manager. I sent it
Mm-hmm.
to even the attorney general because they deal with open meetings
Right.
issues. And I wanted them to have this, receive a copy of this. And I said, well, I still have concerns that these minutes do not accurately reflect what happened. And I gave the full transcript. And I said, the counselor expressed two separate thoughts. And it was, if wrongdoing is found, the police need to do their job. And I'm assuming he's former law enforcement. And so I'm assuming what he meant by that, though I can't put words in his mouth, is, well, they need to do whatever they do when they find wrongdoing, which is probably refer for criminal charges, right? And also the people involved need to be placed on administrative leave and while this is going on. And so she somehow conflated these two thoughts together, mashed them up, and came up with, if wrongdoing is found, then they need to be put on administrative leave. And the
Interesting.
council passed it. That was what was interesting, was they approved those minutes with no changes.
Hmm.
Nobody said,
What is
hey,
what does
this
that
isn't
say
what
to you?
happened.
What does that say to you?
Well, they had an executive session at that July 23rd meeting, and I would love it if somebody could, the public does not have access to those, but my understanding is there are times when, maybe, I don't know if law enforcement could or an attorney could, but it would be really interesting if someone could go listen to that and see if they had a conversation about how do we deal with this?
I
Because,
think I recorded that.
well,
And
there was an executive session
oh,
too. That's
executive
like
session.
where they
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
you can't hear it. It's because like usually personnel issues or different issues that they're law, potential litigation, things like that, that they're allowed to discuss away from the public. And I would just like to know how they all suddenly got on the same page that no one's going to say anything about this when that's clearly not what happened. And I'm not going to say, because I don't know what they said in executive session, but suddenly nobody's going to say, hey, wait a minute, that's not what happened, even the person who made the motion. So I just find that to be really strange.
Mm-hmm.
And I
I
wanted to get it on the record, which is why I wrote that email at the time. And
I just want to read a Facebook post from Nancy Ann Anderson. All right.
okay.
And um, she was on the Columbus Animal Control Advisory Board. No longer. She was what? On there for
Several months.
several months. Okay.
Yeah.
So this was her post, right? Um, I was holding off before saying anything, but it's already out there, so I will say my piece before incorrect things get spread. Again, this is Nancy Ann Anderson from the Columbus Animal Control Advisory Board. Earlier this week, with a heavy heart, I resigned from the Columbus Animal Control Advisory Board. Crazy enough, the vet also resigned. Of course, that's Dr. Hall, who spoke at that city council meeting that night that they ordered the external investigation. Crazy enough, the vet also resigned. So I'm not sure if he's going through the same things I am, but overall, this is a really bad look for our city. I did not want to resign. I was given a courtesy call informing me that to save face, in quotes, I should voluntarily resign or city council was going to remove me anyway. So to make my life a little bit easier, I just went ahead and did it. I've been saying for months, as soon as I started confronting legitimate issues, such as several 14th Amendment violations, several Fourth Amendment violations, First Amendment violations, legitimate animal cruelty and abuse evidence, enough that they should have shut the entire place down and started completely over, that they were going to get rid of me being on the board. So it wasn't a surprise. However, Instead, they decided to threaten those shining light on the issues instead of fixing them. While I'm upset, the big picture here is the state law classifying dogs as personal property needs to change to make change happen, and I plan to continue my advocating on a higher level. The city will continue to do what they want because they will view these animals as their property that they can do whatever they want with. I truly hope that can be changed in the future because those fur babies deserve so much better, and the citizens do too. And that, again, that was from Nancy Ann Anderson, who was on the Columbus Animal Control Advisory Board for a couple of months. So she was given a courtesy call that to save face, you might as well resign. So she was there from our conversations, and from just reading that, that was transparency right there. That was her being transparent because she did resign to allegedly save face in the community. But we know she's an attorney, and she said, you know what? I get to me that, and I can sum that up. I'm going to take this to a higher level because y'all ain't interested, essentially, in what I have to say. And if you think that this is what I'm going to do for our city, that I'm just going to sit there and, I don't want to say play dead, but you know what I mean? I'm just going to sit there and let things go. You've got another thing coming.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really interesting because she's not even the first advisory board member that has happened to. There was a member named Stephen Waters who I believe last year got a call from a city council member, which was the city council member that put him on that board, and said, you can either resign or we are going to vote to have you removed. And he also resigned because of that tactic. And so I would have liked to have seen if they were actually going to vote Ms. Anderson off the board. But obviously we didn't get to see that. But there was an incident with the golf board related to the city where they actually held a hearing that was public, and they voted I don't know if it was the chair, I believe it was the chair or a member off that board because of a conflict of interest that apparently had been a conflict for many years, but the city attorney's office had just discovered this conflict. And I don't know anything about golf, don't really care about golf, but it would be interesting to know why they suddenly wanted to discover a conflict that had been around. There's a lot of funny business going on with the Animal Control Advisory Board. They have a thing where you have to live in Columbus to be on it. And there's someone that they won't put on that board because she would be a rescue representative. And so they have a certain slot for a rescue representative, and she does not live in Columbus, but the previous person who was on it, who was the head of that rescue, also doesn't live in Columbus, never has. And that person was on it for almost 4 years and nobody made a peep and didn't seem to care. But this other woman, somebody doesn't want to be on that board. And so suddenly her not living in Columbus is a problem that they've discovered. And so they don't want the board. I'm not going to say they don't want the board, but it appears that someone does not want the board to be a powerful entity and to really have any teeth. And I remember the first board meeting that I attended, they were talking about things like we should paint a rainbow mural on the wall at CACC to make it look nicer and be more cheerful. And they were saying like we should put a spay and neuter ad on the sides of garbage trucks. And at that point, they had just started killing for space again when they had gone years without doing it because rescues were just busting themselves to make that happen with no effort from the city. But they had started killing for space again because some of the rescues just, I don't think, could keep up at that pace anymore. And I'm attending this meeting and I'm expecting that that's what they're going to be talking about. And they're talking about rainbow murals and spay and neuter ads. And I'm thinking, first of all, you don't need to make a spay and neuter ad until you actually start spaying and neutering the animals that are leaving your facility.
And they did not do that.
No, they are not. Under Kenita Hardnett Johnson, they are releasing all their animals to adopters unaltered.
Doesn't that go against the whole law of things?
Well, yeah, and even worse, Animal SOS, which is a local group that works with rescues up north, they offered her funding. They have a hip to snip program, and one of their representatives spoke to city council and said, hey, we emailed her to say, offer her funding to get these animals altered before they leave. And she ignored our email. And we were also aware that the Kathy Bissell of Bissell Pet Foundation, that huge foundation, was trying to reach that shelter last summer about the same thing. And for whatever reason, she didn't get in touch. It was hard to get with her. I did end up speaking to her, but by that time, so much time had passed that she couldn't remember the specifics of what had happened. She did try to reach them about funding for that. And so the question is, so why do they not want their animals altered before they leave? It's just strange. It's
Because a
very,
lot of the animals, obviously, as we know, that are taken in are a result of people not spaying or neutering their animals. So they are then tasked with picking them up or bringing them in. And these could be the same exact animals that they put with an adoption family. The family may not have wanted it, or the dog or the cat. And as a result, some people, as we know, who just go ahead, just say, and put the dog or the cat out the door, or just abandon them. Or I'm not saying this happened there, but based on 30 years of knowing how things work, I mean, it's just that stray could go right back to the animal shelter. And the reason being is because the animal shelter did not spay or neuter that animal to begin with.
And yesterday, if you look at the CACC Facebook page, they just posted a PSA about how you should spay and neuter your animal. And so we're just like, let's start at home. Clean up your own home first before you start looking at what other people are doing, because by making sure every animal leaves there fixed, you are going to impact the problem so much more than you would with an ad on a garbage truck. Because I don't think very many people are like going to see an ad on a garbage truck and say, oh yeah, I forgot to have my animal neutered. It's not,
I'm sorry.
that's a thing down the road. If everything's almost perfect in your city, then put an ad like that. But
But it's just that's just painful to even hear that they wanted to put first of all, an ad on a garbage truck, an
Mhm.
ad of all the places the city could put an ad on a garbage truck. I
Mhm.
mean, pardon me for saying this, and I hate to say it, but it's being realistic. The animals that they put down or kill, it's not euthanization to me. So these are my
No,
words, not yours. And then they dump
no,
in
I
that.
agree with you. Yeah.
Okay, and they dump in that plastic thing and wheel it away, goes in the garbage out back, and then the obviously the garbage truck picks up the animals, the killed
Mhm.
animals, and then you want to go ahead and put an advertisement on there, spay and neuter your dogs and cats, even though we don't spay and neuter now. I mean, that's just
And that goes back to what we have been saying and others have said, like including Nathan Winograd, who wrote a letter of No Kill Advocacy Center,
yep.
wrote a letter to our mayor and council and said, when you have your animal center underneath the auspices of the department that handles trash, guess what? The animals get looked at and treated like as trash. And that's exactly what we saw with Chai
Mm-hmm.
in that, and the other dogs that were just dumped in those bins. And then they're taken to the actual landfill, if you can believe that. They're not even cremated or anything like that. They are literally dumped at the city landfill. And so I don't think you could have a better illustration of how they're treated like trash. And they that need to be taken out from under that department and under Drayle Short, who has had control in some way or another. She's the public works director in some way or another for well over 10 years. I want to say it was 2012, I think, when she was not sure the exact year she took over, but it was like that was around that era when she was managing it. And so, and then she's handpicked everyone who has succeeded her, and we just can't have it under that department or under her um, anymore. And just as an aside about the spay and neuter, several months ago, they adopted during the Bissell pet event
Mm-hmm.
where they do free adoptions. They adopted an unaltered male and an unaltered female to the same family. And people saw that. You could even see in the picture that the male was unaltered, and
Mm-hmm.
people were just freaking out. And volunteers had to take it upon themselves to contact people and make sure that animals were altered, help the people because the appointments are backed up for that. So they wanted to make sure that there was not, 2 months there before they could get an appointment for them to have an oops litter or something like that. So I believe someone paid for the female to be spayed at an outside vet or something like that.
So CA,
That was just, we spoke about before council about that because that was like, are you kidding me?
right, right. So I mean, just to end this, because I know we've been talking about this for a while, although you've been working on it for a very long time, along with Mimi Seiger, and other animal advocates there.
Debbie, yeah.
That's right, Debbie Wooten. What do you think? What do you believe? Your words, so it can be speculatory.
Sure.
What do you think is going to come out of all this? Do you think we will have a place in Columbus, Georgia, where there will be an animal shelter that is designed for the animals to be taken care of, to bring them in, to hold them, to have adoption events, to not have closed doors, to have a manager or a division manager who has experience with animals? How do you hire a person who has no experience with animals to be the division manager? I can't, that's a whole nother Facebook Live. But with all these things said, an animal shelter should be designed for the animals, not
Right.
the humans who don't have experience, are talking about others, just do the hard stick. Come on, we want to get out of here on time.
Yeah.
Caught on video, right? Kanita going, I'll let all the dogs out of here, right? I mean, what do you think is going to happen with a shelter that is in the place it is right now? Do you have high hopes, or where do you stand with this right now?
Um, I do. We always say we will prevail and we are not going away. So, I mean, my hope is that they will see this as an opportunity to really do what needs to be done and do it right, and not do something in a quick way where they have the people who have been previously involved,
Mm-hmm.
involved in picking an interim director who's just as bad as the current. I mean, none of that stuff. I mean, they need to actually look at this as an opportunity and stop being defensive when citizens contact them. I mean, there's a lot of defensiveness right now going on. So I hope to see it sooner rather than later. But if we have anything to say about it, it will happen. It's just a matter of, do they want it to happen soon and happen nicely, or do they want to, be dragged kicking and screaming into doing it? And I hope they want to have it done soon. I know there are some people on council who are animal lovers and who actually, other ones who care about the community. They might not specifically, be animal lovers, but they do care about good government. And I hope those people will come together and actually work with the community and make it happen sooner rather than later. But my prediction is that it will happen.
Okay.
And I
Allie,
hope it's soon. Thank
Allie,
you.
yes, we appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. And
Thank you so much for covering it.
not a problem. That's what I'm here for. And, we'll see what happens as a result of the end of the day, what they've been able to get from that search warrant. I'm sure we'll get uh, a little bit of information. But again, there's a city council meeting tomorrow. You said 5:30, right?
That's great. 5:30 in the council chambers, and we have 15 people that signed up to speak, and it was amazing because we only knew of a couple of them, and then all of a sudden there were 15 signed up. So this really is becoming a bigger and bigger with the community getting involved.
I
So
was going to say, did you sign up yet? And yeah, answered
I'm
the.
not allowed to speak for a few more, like
Oh,
my
that's
60
right.
days hasn't gone by yet.
That's
So
right. Well, you
I'll
were
be
allowed
back.
to you were allowed to speak here, and I'm sure this will get a whole
Yes.
lot more attention as
Thank
the
you.
city council knows, not just locally but around the country. So
Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you. Always the best thing for the animals. And I sincerely hope that the mayor and the city manager and the rest of the council really come to their senses, if you will, and listen to the animal advocates. Because you know what? At the end of the day, the blood of all these animals that they've had to euthanize/kill is
Mhm.
on their hands. And if that is something that they're okay with being, I'm
Mhm.
not going to judge. I'll stay in my own lane. But this doesn't have to be happening. And we appreciate all your efforts to make sure that this is not going to be happening and that there's going to be shelter reform there. And I'd say to hire, to hire a director and then a division manager who has experience with animals, and
Yeah.
also people who are not just there to get out of work on time.
Yes. And they've had a lot of applicants who really do care. So hopefully they'll move toward hiring those people.
Allie Johnson, keep up the good work. We
Thank
appreciate you.
you.
All right. Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.